Hello and welcome to the Alpha Edge Podcast, the show for men over 50 who refuse to fade out, slow down, play small, or settle for average. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a healthy aging expert, coach, and founder of the Alpha Edge, and I am here to help you get and stay strong in every dimension of your life, physically, mentally, emotionally, morally, and spiritually. You're here because you're ready to reclaim your power, to own your masculinity, and lead your life with strength and purpose. If you're ready to sharpen your edge, revive your drive, and lead like a man who's built for more, you're in the right place. All right, men, let's get after it. You were not made to sit under fluorescent lights all day, staring at spreadsheets, slowly softening into something tame and safe. Inside every man is a wilderness, a feral heart, a pulse that beats for danger, adventure, conquest, and brotherhood. And when that wildness has no outlet, when it's locked in a cage of cubicles and commutes, that man begins to die inside. He may look alive, but he's already fading. Think about it. For most of human history, men lived in tribes. We hunted, fought, bled, and thrived together. Then we traded the tribe for the farm for the factory for the office. And with each trade, a little more of our feral nature was stripped away. We became civilized, domesticated, neutered. And here's the dangerous part. Culture wants us tame. Culture tells us to sit down, shut up, be nice, and comply. Don't rock the boat. Don't climb the mountain. Don't fight the fight. Just be safe. Just be small. Just be soft. And I don't buy it. And if you're listening to this podcast, I know you don't buy it either, because you felt it, haven't you? That itch under your skin, that gnawing hunger for something more than meetings and mortgages, that sense that you were made for the wilderness, not the waiting room. You felt the call to go feral, to run free, to bleed, to sweat, to risk, to live like the man you were designed to be. And in today's episode, I want to talk about what it means to reclaim that masculine wildness. I want to share with you guys some times in my own life when I went completely feral. I want to explore how we ended up so damn tame and why it's killing us. And most importantly, I want to give you the antidote, the tools to rewild your body, your mind, your spirit, and to do it alongside a band of brothers who refuse to let you live small. So buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride. So how do we end up here? How did men go from hunters and warriors to paper pushers and passive spectators? It wasn't overnight. It happened in stages. First, we lived in tribes. For thousands of years, the rhythm of a man's life was raw and untamed. Hunting, building, protecting, defending. Danger was never far away, but neither was brotherhood. Men knew who they were because survival required it. And then came the farm. So at this point, we traded the wild for the plow. Life was still physical, still dangerous at times, but it was more controlled. Instead of chasing game across open plains, men tilled fields. Instead of raiding enemies, they built fences. We became rooted to one spot, more stable, but less wild. Then came the factory. The Industrial Revolution promised progress, but it also chained men to machines. No more adventure, no more exploration, just repetition. Men became cogs in the system. We gave up the dirt under our fingernails for grease on our overalls. And then finally came the office, the fluorescent-lit, climate-controlled, padded chair prison of the modern man. Now, instead of swinging an axe, we click a mouse. Instead of testing our strength against the elements, we fight rush hour traffic. Instead of standing shoulder to shoulder with brothers in a hunt, we sit shoulder to shoulder in silence at cubicles. And with each step, we became more civilized, more domesticated, more disconnected from the wildness inside of us. And culture told us this was progress. Be a good boy, play nice, don't take risks, don't make waves. But here's the truth. Progress has a cost. And the cost of taming men has been devastating. We've traded vitality for comfort, brotherhood for isolation, adventure for safety, and it's killing us. Because a man without wildness is not fully alive. He's a shadow, a shell. He's civilized, but he is not whole. And that's why so many of us feel restless, anxious, or dead inside. We were designed for danger, for challenge, for conquest. Instead, we're handed office chairs and antidepressants and told to smile. And deep down, we know something's missing. Now, let me bring this a little closer to home. I personally know what it feels like to go feral because I've been blessed enough to live it. So I grew up on a big beef cattle farm in southwestern Pennsylvania, and when I wasn't saddled with chores, I was free to run wild. I built forts, I chased cows, I fished in ponds, and I disappeared into the woods until dark. There were no cell phones, no GPS trackers, just me, my siblings, and my imagination, and a world waiting to be conquered. That farm was my wilderness, and those early years burned something into me, the joy of being untamed, free, and wild. Fast forward a couple decades, and life looked a whole lot different. I was living in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I was married to my first wife and had a future sort of kind of mapped out in front of me. And then the bottom of my life fell out. My wife left me, and that pain ripped the floor right out from underneath me. And I did what a man with a feral heart does. I just went wild again. I grabbed my two brothers and a good friend, and we set off on a sailboat. For 6 months, we lived on that boat. Now, guys, this was a 46-foot sailboat without an engine, or correction, it had an engine. It didn't have an operational engine, so we literally sailed everywhere we went. And if a 46-foot sailboat sounds big, put 4 large dudes on that boat and lock them together on that boat for 6 months. That boat got small really quick. But we made our way slowly south through the Caribbean. We lived on that boat, like I said, for 6 months. We spearfished for our food. We drank rum like it was water. We weathered storms, and we lived completely outside the law. No rules, no bosses, no time clocks, no plan, just raw adventure. We were wild, we were reckless, and we were alive. And by the time we reached the shores of Venezuela, I was a different man. I was scarred, sure, but I was more awake than I'd been in a long time. Now, by contrast, when I came home from this adventure, now, side note, I did end up spending a little over 6 months in Venezuela teaching English, and that's a whole nother kind of feral adventure. But when I got back stateside, when I came back home, the first job I got, because of course I was broke, I was an assistant manager at a B. Dalton's in a local mall. So the juxtaposition to being feral, to being free, to being lawless on the Caribbean Sea with my brothers, just comparing that to being the assistant manager in a B. Dalton's bookstore in a local mall is quite striking. And then time rolls on, and the next season of my life came. Marriage again, now some young children, this time with a corporate job, a mortgage, responsibilities stacked high on my shoulders. And that wild part of me, the part that thrived on danger and adventure, was caged again. But a wild man can only be caged for so long, and the way I scratched that itch was by heading 50 miles out to sea to fish. The ocean became my temporary wilderness. Out there, away from deadlines and conference calls, I could breathe again. I could remember who I was. But here's the point. That feral hunger never really leaves you. You can bury it under responsibilities. You can numb it with alcohol or entertainment. You can try and deny it, but it's there. And when you ignore it, you suffer. I've lived both sides of that coin, and I bet you have too. Maybe you haven't set sail for Venezuela, but you felt it. That taste of freedom, that surge of aliveness when you step outside the cage, and you felt the ache when you're trapped, civilized, and domesticated. So what happens when men lose touch with their wildness? What happens when we ignore that feral heart, that wild heart inside of us when we become domesticated? We pay the price. When a man becomes too tame, too civilized, he starts to wither. Depression creeps in. Anxiety festers. He feels aimless, restless, and hollow. That gnawing hunger inside him doesn't just go away, it mutates. It turns into addictions, distractions, and escapes. Porn becomes the counterfeit for real conquest. Video games replace adventures. Alcohol numbs the ache of a life unlived. Physically, the cost is written all over our bodies. Just take a look around you. Soft bellies, rounded shoulders, weak frames. Our ancestors swung axes. They drew bows, climbed cliffs. We hunch over keyboards, and our bodies show it. Softer, slower, sicker. Comfort has made us weak. And it's not just us. It's our families, our communities, our culture. Weak men create weak homes. Weak homes create weak communities. Weak communities create a weak nation. You can draw a straight line from the death of masculine wildness to the chaos we see in our culture and our society today. But here's the scariest part. Most men don't even realize what's happened. They think this is normal. They think boredom, low energy, and quiet despair are just a part of getting older. They accept softness as their destiny. That's a lie. The truth is, when we let go of our wildness, we're not just losing our edge, we're losing our souls. We were designed for challenge, for risk, for adventure. When we trade that for comfort and conformity, we become ghosts of who we were meant to be. And if you felt that restlessness in your chest, that itch you can't quite scratch, that dull ache of something missing, that's your wild heart crying out. That's your soul reminding you that you were made for more. But here's the good news. Wildness isn't gone. It's not extinct. It's not dead. It's just buried under layers of comfort, culture, and conformity. And the antidote is simple, but it isn't easy. And it's this: rewild yourself. You don't need permission. You don't need a program. You don't need to wait until life feels convenient. You just need to start reclaiming what's already inside you. So what does that look like? It looks like getting outdoors, off the carpet, away from climate-controlled buildings with fluorescent lights, and back into creation. Go hike a mountain, camp in the woods, hunt, fish, climb. Let the sun burn your skin and the dirt cake your hands. Risk getting lost. Risk being uncomfortable. Out there, you'll find parts of yourself that the office chair has been suffocating. It looks like learning primitive skills. Build a fire without matches. Shoot a bow. Carve some wood. Track an animal. These things connect you not just to the land, but to your ancestors. They remind you that you come from warriors, hunters, and builders, not middle managers. It looks like stepping onto the mats of a martial arts gym. Test yourself against another man. Feel what it's like to push your body to exhaustion, to be humbled, to bleed and sweat with honor. There is no substitute for the camaraderie and the raw aliveness that comes when men clash in combat. It looks like picking up heavy iron in the gym. Strength training isn't just about bigger muscles. It's about reclaiming your sacred physicality. When you push against resistance, you're not just building your body. You're reminding your soul of what it means to overcome. And here's the thing. These aren't hobbies. They aren't extras if you have the time. They are medicine for the male soul. They're not luxuries. They're lifelines. Every man listening to this has a choice. Stay tame, soft, and civilized, or rewild yourself. Step back into danger, risk, and challenge. You were made for it. And the moment you start moving in that direction, even if it's as simple as a weekend hike or a jiu-jitsu class, you're going to feel it. The pulse, the fire, that feral heart beating strong again. Because the cure for a man's restlessness isn't another promotion, another Netflix binge, another round of golf, or another round of drinks. The cure is to remember who you are, a wild man, made for danger and adventure, called to live ferociously. Now, let me be clear here. You cannot do this alone. That wildness inside of you was never meant to be lived in isolation. A lone wolf is a dead wolf. Every man needs a tribe. Every man needs brothers who will push him, sharpen him, and refuse to let him stay tame. I think back to that 6-month sailing trip after my first wife left me. I was wrecked. I was gutted. I was raw. I was bleeding. But I didn't head off into the open seas alone. I had my 2 brothers and a really close friend with me, my band of brothers. Together, we set sail with no plan but to go south. We spearfished. We weathered storms. We ran aground. We fixed what broke. We lived by our wits. And here's what I learned. It wasn't just the adventure that saved me. It was that brotherhood. It was those men beside me. When the sea turned crazy and violent, we faced it together. When we pulled in a fresh fish out of the ocean, we feasted together. When my heart was breaking, my brother stood shoulder to shoulder with me, reminding me I wasn't alone. Now that's covenant level brotherhood. Not casual friendship, not let's grab a beer if it's convenient. No, this is blood-deep loyalty. This is men who show up when it's hard, when it's messy, when the world feels like it's collapsing. And look, this isn't just my idea. The Bible itself is filled with stories of men who lived, fought, and bled together. David had his mighty men. Jesus sent his disciples out 2 by 2. And when a paralyzed guy needed healing, it wasn't his faith that moved Jesus. It was the faith of the 4 men who carried him, ripped the roof off, and lowered him down. That's the picture. That's the blueprint. Men refusing to let men stay stuck, to stay weak, to stay caged. So here's the question. Who are your brothers? Who's going to rip the roof off for you? And maybe the harder question here is, who are you willing to do that for? Because here's the truth. Going feral by yourself will just make you reckless. But going feral with a band of brothers, that's going to make you unstoppable. And now, if you think this idea of wildness is just some romantic fantasy, something we left behind with the caveman, let me remind you of a few men who really embodied it. Men who leaned into their feral heart and who refused to be domesticated. First up, let's take my man Teddy Roosevelt. So Theodore Roosevelt, this guy was born frail, weak, and asthmatic. By every measure, he should have grown into a timid, fragile man. But he refused to accept that fate. He forged himself into a fighter, a boxer, a cowboy. He charged up San Juan Hill with the Rough Riders. And later, as president, he preached what he called the strenuous life. The belief that man was meant for toil, for risk, for adventure, not for comfort and ease. Roosevelt's wildness made him one of the most formidable leaders this nation has ever known. Or look at Ernest Shackleton. His ship Endurance was crushed by Antarctic ice, leaving him and his men stranded in one of the most brutal environments on Earth. But Shackleton refused to let his crew perish. He led them across frozen seas, sailed a lifeboat hundreds of miles through deadly waters, climbed uncharted mountains, and every single one of his men survived. That's wildness harnessed into leadership, adventure, and grit. And going back further, Samson in the Bible, and if you guys haven't listened to that podcast episode we did probably a couple months ago by now, definitely go back and check that out. But Samson was a man of wild strength. He was fearless and untamed. Now, his story is a cautionary tale also because his wildness, when left unguarded, became reckless and destructive. But it's proof of what happens when raw power beats in a man's chest. He was literally unstoppable until he gave away the source of his strength. And then there are all of the countless frontiersmen and explorers of this world. Guys who looked at an endless horizon and said, let's go. Men who blazed trails, faced down storms, carved lives out of wilderness with nothing but grit, courage, and steel in their hands. These were not soft men. They weren't tamed men. They were feral, fierce, and free. The point is simple. Wild men have always been the ones who shape history. Not the comfortable, not the compliant, not the tame. The men who step into danger, into risk, into the unknown, those are the men who leave a legacy. And you and I, we're cut from that same cloth. That wildness is still in our blood. It's waiting to be awakened. But brother, here's the truth. You were not made for comfort. You weren't made to be tamed, to sit in traffic, shuffle paper, to live out your days staring at screens. You were made for the wild, for danger, for risk, for adventure, for brotherhood. And every man listening right now faces a choice. You can stay domesticated. You can keep numbing yourself with distractions, pretending that itch in your chest isn't real. You can stay soft, safe, and small. Or you can answer the call. You can rewild yourself. You can reclaim the feral heart God put inside you. You can step out of the cage and into the unknown, into the life you were designed to live. But here's the catch. You can't just think about it. You've got to do something. So here's my challenge for this week. Pick one thing, just one. Go hike a trail, sleep under the stars, sign up for that jujitsu class, build a fire in the woods, lift something heavy, take a risk that scares you, push against comfort. And don't do it alone. Call a brother, grab a wingman, find your tribe, because feral without brotherhood is reckless, but feral with brotherhood, that's unstoppable, guys. That's legacy building. That's what's going to make you truly alive. So here's the charge. Stop living like a neutered, tame, civilized man. Step into your wildness. Reclaim your strength. Live ferociously, because the world doesn't need any more nice guys in cubicles. The world needs dangerous, capable, wild men who know who they are and what they were made for. You were born wild. You were made for battle, for adventure, for brotherhood. So go take it back. Okay, men, that's our show for this week. Don't forget to download our free guide titled How to Raise Your Testosterone Naturally. You can find the download link in the show notes for this episode on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on. If you've enjoyed today's show, here are 3 ways you can support us. Number 1, share this episode with a friend. Number 2, make sure to like and follow this show, and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Number 3, give us a follow over at Instagram. We're at Alpha Edge Army. So that's Alpha Edge Army all run together. I really appreciate you men taking the time to listen. And until next week, stay strong.